And let's see, I don't think I missed any of the housekeeping stuff. With that, I am excited to touch on our topic, which is really how to help practices identify and figure out how to best enter EFT payments, as well as set up accounts to best manage your payments, and so much more. Actually, we did a webinar a month or two ago about getting out a network. And so Colleen is just the insurance guru, and she's been gracious enough to offer her expertise for follow-up questions to that webinar as well. So we're going to touch on a lot of this electronic payment type stuff and managing accounts, but as you'll soon find out, she's a wealth of information. So Colleen Huff has really been in the dental field for over 25 years. She actually started as a customer service rep for MetLife Dental. So no wonder why you're such the insurance guru, because you've sat on the other side of that phone that all of us are used to sitting on hold with. From there, Colleen moved to New Jersey, and this really was her first introduction into actually working inside of a dental practice. She honed her office skills for about 7 years before taking on the world of management. That was back in 2001. Colleen has been an independent consultant for numerous offices throughout the country, anywhere from a startup practice, starting from scratch, to helping, well-established practices reorganize and improve. Colleen is the founder and president of the Buffalo chapter, the West New York chapter of ADOM. For those of you who aren't familiar with ADOM, Colleen's very involved. And Colleen, I'm actually going to ask you to just touch on ADOM just a little bit before you dive in. But it's the American Association of Dental Office Managers, and it's a wonderful group for all of you dental office managers. And she's an active ambassador for them. She achieved her fellowship with ADOM, which again, she can touch on, in 2015, which is a high distinction. In 2015, she began her speaking career. And so now you can find her doing things like this and on webinars and traveling all over the country, speaking to large organizations or small ADOM chapters all across the board. She's a published author and contributor in lots of different publications. And she was recognized as one of the top 25 women in dentistry in 2017 by Dental Products Reports. So with that, I want to just thank you, Colleen, so much for being here, and welcome you to this group, and turn it over to you.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And before I get started, let me touch on ADOM a little bit. So for those of you that aren't familiar, if you're in any management position or any type of administrative position within the office, pardon me 1 second, I have to switch my headset. It just decided to almost die.
Naturally, right?
Technology. Yeah.
All right.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, perfect.
Okay. So the ADOM is for the administrative team. We are, as a group, up until ADOM didn't really have anywhere to go. Doctors had their groups, assistants had their groups, hygiene had their groups. And so back in 2000
can you hear her? Colleen, I can't hear you. Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on.
No.
Not yet.
Technology. I noticed that one.
we can read that.
While she's doing that, she's going to tell you more about the group. But I will say, I went to my first in-person event at the ADOM National Conference that they do. It's every September, like the early September, like 9th through the 11th. And what an amazing opportunity for the administrative team. There were some dentists there, but I mean, these teams, they are each other's army. And this is like, they've really created this support network of dental office managers. and they go to each other for everything. And Colleen are you there?
I think so. I switched
Oh,
to
yeah, you're
off the
back.
headset.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
So you probably will hear the rooster now.
Okay,
But so yeah,
perfect.
so as you were saying, ADOM is for us as administrative. It's a support system. And anybody who's been in the field long enough, same with insurance and everything else, it's changed a lot and it's harder. I started in 2001 in management, and the changes just from there to 2010 were incredible. And the amount of things we have to do and the amount of regulations, the amount of rules and all of that. And especially and that's part of where the study groups and the chapters started, because we went to national and went, ooh, I need this, but I need it more than once a year. And so I'm a firm believer in that combination of a local chapter, if there's one near you, and national as a combination to help you educate and make sure you're the most up to date. COVID especially, I'll tell you, ADOM stepped up within 2 days where none of the dental societies that I know of across the country, and no offense to any doctors that are listening, but they didn't do it the same. So I would say check them out and see what they have. If there's any local chapters, look into them. Mm-hmm. And the fellowship of the FADOM, the MADOM, and the DADOM, it's, there's not a degree for what we do. And this is our degree. And if you do it even just for yourself, that's fine. Whether your doctor recognizes it or you think, don't necessarily do it to be getting more money or anything like this. This is about your education. So that's what I suggest. So
that's amazing. And so those other distinctions, ADOM is the national group, but then the FADOM and the MADOM are like certification. So you go through this course and it's continuing ed. And once you achieve a certain number of hours and pass the test, right?
There's 3. Yeah. And I'll tell you, when a number of us who are, we call ourselves the dinosaurs of the group sometimes, that have been, a lot of us were doing this 15, 20 years when we did our fellowships or something like that. Mm-hmm. It was daunting to take tests on things that you really felt you knew, and sometimes weren't as good at it as you thought, yeah. Or you had my friends who would retake the tests until they had it perfect, which is the true sign of a ADOM member, because we're a little bit,
me. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, 95 wasn't good enough. I needed the 100. I have friends that took it over. Whereas I was like, I passed. I had a very reasonable, degree number. I'm good.
Yeah.
But there's different levels. And they realized after they finished the FADOM, about 5 years into it, a lot of the fellows were going and saying, we want more. We want more. And so ADOM figured out how to do that for them. Mm-hmm. So,
and they cover every topic. And I mean, how
everything.
Many people are at the national meeting, the conference sells out every year, both for sponsors and for attendees. And it is amazing.
I think they cap out the attendees between, I think it's 1,000, but I could be wrong. It might be 800, but then you have all the vendors there. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, a room full of managers who none of us are shy, or maybe 1%. It's quite the group of energy, and the energy is amazing.
The energy is great.
And I'm speaking this year, so you have to come with Laura. I'm with Laura Nelson, which I'm super excited. So so let's get started of why you're really here. I had spoken with Janelle and Megan about some things when they asked me to put this together for you. And what I want to talk to everybody about today are the EFTs and the ERAs, and how I see their role this technology being beneficial to your office. And I want to give you some tools that I developed over when I first started doing them, so that we don't feel like we're losing track of it. Part of what I like to tell people is, I have been doing this. It will be 28 years in August. So when I started, there weren't electronic payments and, everything. There weren't even electronic claims. They were just getting started with them at that point. And so moving from our paper and feeling and seeing things to the digital part of it can be difficult because we have our systems. And so when I started seeing the increase in the faster payment for the electronics, I knew I had to learn a new system. And so I'm going to teach you today some of what I put into place so that I felt better, making sure I knew where the payments were going, but also for our doctors. It's their money. And so I was working for a woman who she embraced technology, but delicately and tentatively and with precision, which was good because I don't jump into it. I do it systematic. And so we worked well on a system that I'm going to share with everyone. But to start with, let's really talk about what they are. An EFT, because there's acronyms all over the place now, and you don't know what half of them mean anymore, but it's an electronic funds transfer, same as your direct deposit for your paychecks. It's a transaction that takes place on a computerized network, and it goes into your account in the bank. Depending on where it's coming from, it's going to be labeled in a certain way, and we'll talk about that a little further on. The ERA, and I don't know why it's the electronic remittance advice. I don't know why it's named this. Why it can't be an electronic remittance, of benefits or something, but it's basically an electronic EOB. So ERA is that electronic version of the EOB that goes along with the electronic version of your payment. And so a lot of softwares out there, you can pay that these ERAs come straight into your software. And I'm going to show you what they look like in Eaglesoft. And so you don't even have to go looking for those payments. It comes straight into your software. There is a setup to this that you have to follow the steps. But again, once you're set up, it makes it much smoother. The other thing to know for a fact is you are going to have faster pay from the insurance companies. It is the same as electronic claims. They want you electronic. It saves them money. It saves them time. They're not printing. They're not paying for the check. They're not having someone that has to do, however, they're stuffing the envelopes or whatever. It's faster for them. And so because of that, they're going to pay those electronic faster. And I can tell you for a fact, they're going to slow down on the checks. You're going to have
what is the difference in time, do you think?
2 weeks.
On average.
2-3 weeks. You will get Cigna, and some of them you have it within about 3 to 5 business days at the most. And like, for example, MetLife runs checks twice a month. So they run at the middle of the month, the end of the month. Others, it can be 2 to 3 weeks. And I think they will extend that. I know, for example, Medicaid in New York State made it that you had to. They made it mandatory. You can no longer get a physical check from them. You will most likely see this, or what they're going to do is they're either going to force you into an ERA or the credit card payments. Well, why would you do that? You have to pay for those. The other thought behind this, and I got this straight from a gentleman that I know at one of the insurance companies, and I talked to someone else who does investigation into embezzlement. Part of the other reason these were developed was to cut down on embezzlement. If there's not a physical check for you to do anything with, it's straight into the doctor's account, then they can't. They can't take the money. They can't exchange out cash for a check and make everything match up. And we hate to think that way, but that is a reality. I even heard, and from the doctor's standpoint, if there's any doctors listening, make sure you check where those ERAs or EFTs are being sent to. So make sure you're double checking where the accounts are going, that it is going into your account when you're first setting up. Or if you have an issue or a question, that's somewhere to look. Because I did hear a horror story of someone took some of the smaller companies and put it to their own bank. So we can't eliminate, but it cuts down. So the thing with the paper checks is they are less efficient. And they also do take more time. And being who I am, I like to break things down. And so when I was first thinking about and trying to propose to my boss, who wasn't real keen on the EFTs to start with, so I broke it down. And this is literally what I presented to her. So I said to her, okay, we're going to take a look at my day when it comes to what it's going to look like for a paper check. So, and seriously, think about the amount of time it takes to do this. First, you have to sort the mail. Then you have to open the mail. Then you take it out of the envelope and you place it in a pile. Then you get your deposit slip and your stamp. Then you look up the patient. Then you have to enter it. Then you have to write out the check amount on the deposit slip. Now you have to total your deposit slip. Then you have to take it to the bank somehow. All of that is time. And it doesn't seem like a lot of time, but how many of us are doing this while we're on the phone with an insurance company to save time? So there is a lot of time that went into all of that with that paper check. Meanwhile, what I set up with my EFTs is you're going to go to look for your check. You go right onto the bank website. And I'm going to give you some pointers on this in a little bit, but your doctor can set you up to have view only in that account. You can't move it. You can't touch it. You can't do anything other than look at it. So you go to the bank website, you look at the website. You can have a dual screen. I don't know about you guys, and Janelle and I were talking about this
Yeah.
before. I love my double screen. You double screen it. You got the bank website on one side, you pull up your ERAs in front of you, and you enter it. And it's that simple. It can be that simple. It goes right into the chart, and you can save that EOB, that electronic ERA, right into either a folder on the desktop or right into the patient's account. Done. Like, I didn't even put on that other part. What am I doing with EOBs? How am I scanning them? I missed some of that. So there, it's much more efficient and smoother, in my opinion. Do we have any questions so far?
I do. We don't have any in there, but my dentist was really not keen on this electronic stuff because what if it's wrong?
What's wrong? The deposit?
The payment or the EOB. If you want
You're
to
not
fight
gonna-
it.
Oh, if you want to fight it, that's fine. It doesn't change anything unless they're going to take money back.
That's what, like, does that become an issue? Because if they send a paper claim or an EOB and a physical check and you don't cash it, then you can fight it and you never actually took their money.
Correct.
That whole process of like sending money back.
But you'd still have to send money back. So here's the thing to remember, though. If you get a check from an insurance company and it's wrong and you're not going to cash it, you have to still go through the same steps to make sure they take it off correctly, or your doctor still gets a 1099 at the end of the year. So, and the reality is they can't, the one thing that happened and changed about 3 to 4 years ago, and if anybody is listening can correct me on this, let me know. They can no longer just pull the money out of your account without notice, without your approval. You have to send a physical check. And that came about because of some issues that ERAs had, EFTs had for offices.
We did just get a question.
Sure.
Let's see. My dentist wanted to do EFT ERA, but I didn't want it because it's not as easy for us, unfortunately. I have to seek and find on each insurance website to match with a dollar amount on our bank account.
Yes and no, though. So let me show you some pointers in some places. And yes, you do, unless your software allows you to get the ERAs, that can cut down on it. So let me give you some pointers on that, that you can, and hopefully, can you ask what software they have or tell us what software you're on?
Anne Marie, which software are you on? And she says with bulk checks, it's a pain.
Oh, I love it with bulk checks.
So maybe touch on that.
So, well, I am going to actually. So,
Okay.
yeah, there can be some issues and you have to kind of work through it. So let me show you guys some of the steps that I do, and then we'll keep going back to some of the smoothness of it. So what I start to do to start with is, do you all have a separate bank account? And I suggest you have that. Okay. The reason is it makes it simple, and I'm going to show you a sample later as to why. When you're first signing up, give yourself a spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet, you want to know, who is the insurance company? Do they allow them? As you're working on it, I had yes, no, we're working on, because you didn't know where, who did you contact? When did it go out? When was it finished? And then where do I go for that ERA? And that's key. The biggest problem I hear is people don't know where to find it. Okay. If you use ERAs through, let's say through EagleSoft, if you're getting the ERAs, your EOB is right in the claim. You click on the claim, click view claim, EOB is right there. So if you ever have an issue, a question, a problem, it's all saved onto the site. I know other softwares do the same thing. That money that they spend for the ERAs is worth your time. And so I would encourage your doctor to let you do that. That will cut down on where you're searching. This kind of a spreadsheet will cut down on where you're searching. I used to have one particular delta that I could never find. Like, it took me forever. Once I figured out where I went for that abbreviation, I went in here and then I had it. So there is a slight learning curve, but I'm going to show you guys somewhere that you can go to that you could probably find most of them while you're in it. So once you start, the other thing you can do if you're getting ready to enroll is go to their websites and see what they need from you. This is straight off the Delta Dental INS website. So they want they're going to tell you exactly what it takes to enroll it so that you can get signed up correctly, so that you're not confused as to which insurance needs what. And there's also ways to sign up for a number of them. And what I want you to look into, and I'm assuming most people are familiar with, Change Healthcare. So Change Healthcare, you can sign up through them for EFTs and choose a number of insurances but that's also where you can go to see your ERAs in bulk. So even if your doctor won't sign up for the ERAs through the software, you can go into Change Healthcare if you're signed up, and you're going to see MetLife, Guardian, Cigna, a bunch of Deltas. Everything comes right there, and you can pull that EOB without having to go to each individual website. And I'll tell you, I know that this is how a lot of the people that are working as remote billers, this is where they live. They're in this all the time. And they live in Change Healthcare, so they're not going to 12 different ones.
We have a kind of a bunch of comments and questions.
Sure.
When you mentioned a couple slides ago, the separate bank account, you mean just for the EFTs?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's no charge for Delta or MetLife, but other insurance companies want to charge a fee.
For EFTs?
Are there any others without a fee?
Most don't have a fee. I'm unfamiliar with those that do. We didn't pay for anybody.
Okay.
I didn't pay, and I wouldn't. If you're going to charge me to put something electronically in my bank, then send me a check. Honestly,
Right, because I'm trying to save you money by.
I'm trying to save you money and me time. I'm not paying for that. So like Deluxe, we had some that used to come through Deluxe or Echo Payments. If people are familiar, you can print your own check, or I can get charged 1% to direct deposit. I'm printing my own check. So no, I don't condone having to pay for it. Absolutely not.
Okay.
But Cigna, Aetna, any of the big guys are not that I'm aware of, unless they started doing something new. And because I signed on 4 years ago, and that could be something new that's happening.
Okay. Zealous charges 2.19%.
Yeah, I don't like Zealous.
Charge a fee. Change Healthcare charges for ERAs monthly.
They weren't supposed to. No, that was supposed to be stopped. Did they start charging again for the ERAs? I know they started to, and then they got pushed back because the insurance companies are paying already to utilize Change Healthcare. Okay. So my understanding was they pulled that back. So if they can email me that information, I'll look into that because that is new. I know they tried it about 1.5 years ago. And then in January of 2021, it was right before I stepped out of the office, and I threw a fit and my boss threw a fit. It was $10 a month. It's not huge, but it seems silly.
She does say, yes, I'm being charged $9.95 a month.
If she could email me personally, I want to try and check into that for her. There may be other things you're using in the system too, or that you signed up for and didn't realize. So just have her, ask her, the person, to send me a private email.
Okay.
We're going to give you all of her Colleen's contact information at the end too.
Yeah. So the other place that you can sign up to make sure that you're getting EFTs, Enroll Hub has, which is through, you can do Enroll Hub through CAQH or Change Healthcare. And Enroll Hub, CAQH allows you, just like your credentialing, to sign up for a whole number of them. So as you're going along, there's information that you fill in. It sounds like a lot of you do know the EFTs of how to do it through Change Healthcare. And I also know Change Healthcare had 2 sections to it. There are ways to access that ERA without signing up for it in certain cases, but I'll have to look into that. But the part that people get concerned about is the tracking of the payments. They're afraid they're going to lose money. They're going to lose something that gets deposited and not know it's there. And this is where I'm going to show you guys the steps I did and I do when I'm working with an office or entering or training that office and setting up the SOPs. So I said before what your bank statement is going to look like, and it's literally going to look like something like this. It's going to give you your date that you started, who it is, and how much. Okay. And yes, you do have to do some matching, but typically if you're using, let's say, I'm going to show you what it looks like in Eaglesoft. These are my ERAs. So I'm literally just matching up those dollar amounts. I'm looking at Aetna. I'm going to look for $136 somewhere around the 15th of August. And then I'm going to enter that ERA. And so I'm going to take and I'm going to pick those. And once I click on that ERA button, it brings me here. And it shows me everything I need to know. It shows me what was billed, what's the claim amount, what's the patient responsibility, and the coverage. I will be honest, there are some cases that I had a hard time reading this screen And I did still go to the website. Personal choice, it was just for me when I wanted to double check something or if I felt like I wasn't reading it correctly. But for the most part, it's going to give you everything you need. Benefit period for the amount has reached. All of your information is right there. And so I would literally split screen. Here's a picture of my split screen. And I would enter the claim. And I would go through and follow up and make sure that everything was matching up. And the biggest thing you want to do is you want to make a payment type that states EFTs, because you don't want to be looking for a physical check at the end of the day, because take it from one that's marked them wrong. Okay. We don't like those at the end of the day. I want to be good and easy and right at the end of the day. I want to make sure my money matches, my things match. So you want to make sure that you change that payment amount to read as an EFT. That is where you're going to keep yourself from having a bad end of day when things aren't matching and you're looking for a check for $167 and it's 5:45 and you're trying to get out the door. We don't want that. The other thing is you want to watch for the distribution and for marking at final payments. And it's kind of like the way you do a bulk payment. But when all is said and done, the other thing I used to do with my sheet is something like this. And this is just a suggestion. But my boss, being who she was, had a hard time with this. So I used to put the patient's first initial and last name as I entered them in for her. So for her, she could match it at the end of the day to the report she ran. But I would take and have a date that said September 1st. All of what totaled here would be matching my EFTs here. Okay, that total amount. So whatever was here, I would draw a line, would add it up, and then I would have it matching here. And when both of that matched, I would keep a scanned copy on a folder on the desktop that said EOBs and then direct deposit report, and then that month, that day, and it would show me where I left off. Meaning, let's say it's 3 days later, it's a week later, and I forget where I stopped in the bank. Where did I stop looking? Well, last time I ran this was September 1st. So now I'm going to go into my bank and I'm going to look for everything from September 2nd forward. And those are the next EFTs I need to look for. This also by highlighting, and I'm a highlighting person. Anybody who's watched any of my webinars knows I love my highlighters. Every color of the rainbow, give me any color, I can tell you what I use it for. But my highlight tells me I got through it because we also get interrupted, right? How many of you, I mean, if I could ask them to raise their hands, tell me I could get through all of this with nobody interrupting me. Unless I'm working at home, locked in a room with the phone off, I'm going to get interrupted. I'm going to come back and forget where I left off. So again, I highlight it out before I add it up. And so once you have all of that, you attach these two reports, and that goes with your other deposit report to your doctor. That used to go on my doctor's desk. And then she could look at her bank and she knew what she could transfer. So she would then transfer, she knew that she could transfer $1,660.89 out of the one account into her checking account that she wanted to use. In her case, we had a savings and then she had a checking. A lot of doctors just keep them both checking accounts.
Mm-hmm. You touched on bulk check. You said this is like bulk check, but can you elaborate?
I think I have it. I'm trying to think if I have it in here.
Okay.
When I say it's like a bulk check, what I mean is you have to make sure when you're entering it, it's going to look like that in EagleSoft. It's going to have that same look like this of what it's different, the different lines from the bulk check. I just realized that's not in this section, but I can try to pull something up at the end.
Okay. I'll make a note to circle back on that maybe.
The problem with the bulk checks for some people is this is where we could go to the webinar I did yesterday, which was spring cleaning on insurances. Where your bulk payments don't work is if your insurances are not correct in the computer and you have 12 Delta Dentals of New York and 20 Delta Dentals of Wisconsin and 3 MetLifes and 2 Aetnas. That's when you don't like your bulk payments. So if bulk payment isn't working for you, it's not working for you because of something that's not set up correctly or your team's not using the right way. When your insurances are in there correct, your bulk payments should match up And this should be a very easy look at 3 different patients, matches the dollar amount, and goes in.
She
So
said
if you're-
her software is Curve Hero, by the way.
Curve Hero. Okay. I'm not familiar with Curve Hero, so I could do some research into that if they wanted. If the people that are having trouble with bulk, are you guys on like EagleSoft or Shine, or I'm sorry, Dentrix? I'm wondering if that's some of the issue, if it's some of, but I would say I would,
She's
go ahead.
she's specifically with Curve Hero.
Curve Hero. Okay. Send me an email at the end and I'll see if I can come up with any pointers for you on that. The biggest problem with bulk payments is the setup. So as anyone's heard Laura say, and I steal this from her all the time, garbage in, garbage out. I mean, that's just the reality. So if we don't have good things set up to start with, and that's on us as the insurance coordinators, we have to, I just talked on this yesterday, we have to onboard everybody who comes in the door to use the same abbreviation. So we only have one insurance company with one address, with one everything, and that's the only one they choose. If that's not happening, that's where your bulk payments become a nightmare because they're not all going to come under that same payment. And if that's what's happening, I agree with you. Bulk payments aren't fun. And that's not what people want to use.
Mhm.
But you have to take this a few steps at a time. And what I suggest, if you're struggling or if you get one signed up and you can't get the hang of it, don't go to 2 or 3. Don't do more than 1 or 2 to start with. The other reason for this setup here, and I'll tell you the story that happened to me. So we gradually, I started with a couple of the big guys. I went to some of the locals, and I ended up with 2 payments for an insurance company that was local, but I couldn't find the EOB anywhere. I called them. They said it was on Change Healthcare. Change Healthcare couldn't find it. Nobody could trace anything for me. It was this big back and forth. But because I knew that that payment hadn't been entered, it was not highlighted. And every day I kept a copy of that one that was missing with a circle that said not entered, and it was attached behind. So I had 2 pages of what I was looking for still, so that when I went into it the next time, it was on that front. I knew I was still looking for that EOB and that ERA until I found it. It took us about a month, and it was a glitch between the insurance company and Change Healthcare. It was nothing we did wrong, but that way I made sure that I knew the deposit was there. We just had to find the EOB. But by keeping a list and keeping this tracked and keeping this for myself, I was able to follow it, and I was able to add it up.
Somebody asked, you said that the ERA can be directly loaded into the software. Do you know
Correct.
if that's possible in SoftDent by chance?
I can look into it. I don't know. And that's something they could just call and ask. I know that is something, if they don't, some of the newer guys I know are working on it. And sometimes it has to do with, like, for example, you can't use Remote Light. Okay. Or not. Well, yes, for Vine Dental, and get ERAs through EagleSoft. You can't do both, but you can get your ERAs right on Vine. So that's okay. But you can't. So you have to also usually be using whatever clearinghouse they recommend. I know on Open Dental, you have to be with one of 2 to get the ERAs. So you can't use Vine and get it, but you can use, I just blanked. I can see the screen, but there's 2 other clearinghouses that you use. So you have to find out from your software what clearinghouse works with it, because that's who's pulling the information. So if you're not connected to that clearinghouse, they're not getting that information, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So you may even just do a simple call to your to the people who do your e-claims and say, hey, what clearinghouse do I need to be with? And it may or may not end up a cost savings. It could be that you've got such a good deal with who you're doing, it's better to spend a little time looking. But I would set up a system, and you may only want to do EFTs for those that are easy to use. Like Delta's website is simple. MetLife's is easy to find them. There's some that are really very simple, but just know and be prepared that especially the big guys, they're pushing for this.
Mhm.
I guarantee you, the same as Medicaid in New York State, give it a couple of years and
Gonna
you're
go.
either going to have to get it or you're going to be on a credit card. And we don't want to pay the credit cards.
Somebody's helping out the community and says it's dental exchange for open dental.
Thank-
as far as
Thank
the-
you. I could see it and I couldn't picture it. And Dental Exchange is a really easy site to use. And I only found that out recently because I have an office that I have someone who's struggling with the EFTs there, and I'm trying to show her how it can be a benefit. So we looked into it. Right now, they still want to stick with Vine, but we have that as an option. And as we get things going, we may look into that as an option.
Mhm.
So before I move on to talking a little bit, you guys asked me to talk a little bit about dropping insurances and some pointers on that. EFTs, try to see if you can figure out a system that works for you. This is what worked for me. It doesn't mean it's what's going to work for you. But if you have a glitch or an issue or something's harder to start with, try to figure out a way to still make it work. See if there's a fix for it before you give up on everybody, is all I want to say. You may have started with the wrong company and the one who's really bad at it. Look to the big guys. It happens. If I had started with the company Pro Benefits and they lost it for 2 months, I never would have done these. I can tell you that right now. But if you can, but know that if you can get your payments in 3 to 5 days versus 2 weeks,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah.
That's just
Um,
huge.
Colleen, I just put in the chat. There's a question. Do you happen to know what this specific name is on her bank statement?
Okay, hold on. Let me see.
DTC GLIC. It's like operate.
GLIC should be Guardian, I believe. Email that to me because I do have a list that I'm not allowed to share, but has some of those abbreviations. Why I'm not allowed to share, I don't know. They didn't really give me a really valid point other than I'll get in trouble. Curve Hero uses MDN, which is now Change Healthcare. Okay. Curve should have a way to get ERAs through, but I'll have to find that out. That looks
can
like a
find that out,
version of
too.
Guardian, though, to me.
Okay. That list of payments that was headed with September 1 that you were using as an example, was that a printout straight from your bank site?
Yeah, that's exactly how it printed out. And so I would be systematic. I would do keep track of what date I ended. So that's why I printed it straight off and would work right off of that and then kept a scanned copy. I had a folder on my desktop that I kept it all in by month, day, and year.
Okay. Someone else said I have a difficult time registering in Change Healthcare. They don't recognize the office tax ID number.
That's probably a phone call. It could be that somebody messed up somewhere along the way before you. I have had that happen with certain insurance companies because it could be something as simple as they have your doctor's date of birth wrong or they have the doctor's name slightly different. Change Healthcare and some of those companies are extremely precise. I'm in the process of credentialing an office right now, and the DBA is so different than what's on the W-9. It's mind-boggling, and I'm worried in the future of issues. So it could be, however, whatever person maybe set you up with Change Healthcare. Like my one doctor, if certain things had her middle initial in it, or I couldn't find her.
Yeah, specific. There's another question. And where to find MONY ERAs? What's that?
I'm not familiar with that one.
I wonder if it's, something New York maybe? MONY. Anne Marie, can you elaborate on that? We'll let her answer here. Okay.
Okay.
The Q&A in the chat is all cleaned up.
Okay. So I know that, let's see, where are we at? Okay, we're good. So one of the things you guys had asked me to talk to a little bit was about going out of network or dropping insurances. And so the number one reason I'm hearing across the board is the reimbursements lately are too low. I just helped with an office that is taking over one TIN number changed. And the new fee schedule that they're offering for the exact same address, the exact same doctor, but his TIN number changed, has the exams alone $20 lower.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing to go on a network if you decide to, but you have to do it slowly. You have to make sure you analyze your numbers. And if you don't know how, you need to get a hold of somebody who does, or do some research on it. But you need to run your reports. Now, whatever report that is, it shows your reimbursement rates. You need to verify how many patients you're going to affect. Okay. And the last thing I'll tell you is don't do any of them fast. Don't let your doctor see a crown price on one patient for one insurance company and go, that's it, I'm done with Cigna. That's it, I'm done with whatever. You have to analyze those numbers. You have to really find out how much is this going to affect you. I worked with an office in one area that 50% of their patient base was from one employer, and it was their lowest fee schedule. But if they had dropped it, they would have lost, because these were people that won't go if you're out of network. Like, they don't. Yeah. It's like the old GM employees that never paid a dime. Good God, that was a hard switch over when they actually had to pay for something. They won't go out of network. Okay. So you have to know how it's going to affect. So you're going to run a report, something like this. This is, again, I have mainly Eaglesoft reports because that's who I was most familiar with at the time, for the most part. This is called a managed care analysis report. It makes no sense. Name has nothing. We're not in managed care. I don't know why the name. The first time they told me this is where I go, I said, you guys have to rename it. They never listened to me. But it shows your standard fee, what you actually charged, okay, how much you made per unit, and what is the difference. So for this particular example of Northeast Delta Dental, okay, and this is just one, my normal fee I wrote off last year for that particular group, $1,293. Now, this was just a quick snapshot. This was not an extreme one. Most of the time, you're going to see numbers to the point that you sometimes can't read them, which is not good. Okay, you lose it into the other number. But you're going to look at that, and then you're going to run a report. And I don't have a sample of what this looks like, but next you're going to run the report that shows you what patients or how many. So you have to figure out, in Eaglesoft, you would run a report under your patient base, and there's ways to skew it. And you want to go back 18 months to 24 months. Don't run it for all the time, because it doesn't matter. I would go make a decision if you're going to go 18 months or 2 years. Personally, I usually went 2 years, because those are still people that, in my opinion, could show back up at our door, especially since COVID. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that are still just sliding back in. They're just getting things done. But run the report and see how many. If you have a small number of people on an insurance that you're losing thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's not going to do a major impact, that's who you drop first. Mm-hmm. You know, or if your doctor has finally decided they want to work smarter, not harder, and they're okay with holes in their schedule, then you take your time and you get rid of those. But the biggest thing is you have to take this slowly. You have to call that, and you have to get a hold of that insurance and find out what that process is. I had an office recently that I was brought in just after January. I was told they had dropped Cigna. The person who was in charge of it left in February, and we just discovered that she never followed through. She told everybody it was done, but she never actually followed through. Yeah. So they had sent a letter to all of their Cigna patients saying they were out of network, and they've been in network these 4 months. You have to be organized. So you have to create a list, and if you're ready to go, you do draft a letter and inform them of your cancellation date once you find out what that date's going to be. There are offices out there that don't tell people. I'm not big on that, but there are ways that I'm going to show you a letter that I love the wording of, and if you guys want me to send it to you, we can, that explains a little bit of why you're going out of network. And determine your timeline. You have to make sure that you have a set date, and everyone, and I mean everybody, knows what that date is. Mm-hmm. Personally, I like to do it at the end of the year so that it's fresh start. Mm-hmm. But that might be too much if you're dropping a number of them. You might want to do June. You might want to do easy. I like easy times. I like a very distinct time. So maybe June is halfway through the year. Mm-hmm. But find a time and make sure everybody in the office knows and understands why, and that they have the proper verbiage to handle it when the phone calls or the complaints come in. But your letter is essential. Your letter, you need to make sure. And the other thing you have to know is some of these insurance companies are going to preemptively strike your patient base beforehand. And they're going to send a letter before you're even ready to. So you have to be prepared for that too. And I believe Cigna is one of them that did that recently to an office.
Mhm.
But I like the sample letter of, we're
Hey,
writing to
Colleen,
you. Oh, sorry. I
no,
lost you.
I was gonna say, we've already gotten requests for the, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
We've already gotten requests for the letter sample. So if we could make that part of the email follow-up with the recording,
Perfect.
that would be fabulous.
Yeah, and I found this, this is kind of piecemeal. This is one that I had taken and done from a couple of different ones, but so you're talking about in the first part, we're writing for the change of insurance and your status, but this is the key part. Unfortunately, things have changed with this company to the degree that I'm considered a provider. So consequently, as an in-network provider, I'm forced to treat you according to their rules rather than according to your needs or requests. To be clear, and this is the part I like, we are still accepting your insurance and we are certainly not dismissing you as a patient. You might even want to highlight that because the patients assume that because you're dropping an insurance, you're dropping them. And this is key. So you want to make sure that however you write this letter up or whatever you do, that you tell them very clearly you're not dropping them unless it's a plan that does not have out-of-network benefits. So I dropped a DMO plan with an office. We can't see those patients. That's a different letter.
Mhm.
But the change on your end is that you'll be subject to slightly different rates for your portion of care. Stressing that it's care, stressing it's your health, making sure they understand why you're making this decision. And in some cases, you may talk to them and you tell them, please go back to your HR departments, tell the patient and explain to them that your dentist who you're thrilled with dropped because this plan is not paying enough. If they lowered your rates, I would be honest with them and make sure they go back to their HR and HR understands that insurance company is lowering their rates enough that the quality dentists are dropping them. But having a good letter and making sure the patient understands it doesn't mean they're really going to understand it. You're still going to get phone calls.
Yeah.
So anyone who's going to touch that phone call, but also your hygienist, your assistants, your doctor, all have to have the same verbiage because you may get people coming in before the end date and they're sitting in the chair and they're complaining about it. And your hygienist goes, oh, I don't know. I don't do insurance. No, they need to have that education.
So much of what you're saying about this comes back to organization. You have to have a system in place and it's all communication. So
Correct.
from the moment you send that letter out to the calls coming in, you guys, if you're listening and you missed the previous webinar we did with Laura, which preempted Colleen to be so gracious to kind of follow up on it, it's on our website with a guide how to drop the PPO. And it's a lot of this stuff that Colleen is mentioning and some cues on what the talk track should be and kind of how to prepare for that.
Well, and it's important that even your clinical team is able to educate them in the fact that, we're getting rid of the insurances that are making it so that we can't do the quality of care we'd want to do and we're going to do.
Right.
So the biggest thing is though, your doctor has to be prepared to lose patients and be okay with it. So I have an office that I love this doctor. He's fabulous. But when we talked about the fact of, I looked right at him because he was talking about dropping all these plans and I'm like, you can't do that. And he said, why? I said, because are you going to not freak out when you have an hour of time? Well, yeah, they have to still fill the schedule and eventually they will. But do you realize that in the hour you're making what you made in 2, so you can go sit and do something on your computer without freaking out at the front desk? And I could see the anxiety. And I said, this is why we're not dropping more than 1 at a time. If he wanted to do a big, huge get out, and I'm like, you're going to kill your team and they're going to kill you. They're all going to walk because you're going to be flipping out. Other doctors are going to be like, oh, that's fine. I'm good. I'm going to go do my whatever. Those are the things you have to be aware of. But the other thing I want to talk about real quick before you get into dropping plans is also, do you know your umbrella plans? Do you know who you're networked under with those other insurances? And so make sure you understand and know who you've got those plans under, who you're under with, because you might drop Aetna and not realize that you're dropping a number other of ones. You have these different, we've talked about, and I put together, let me just get the next slide. And what I mean by that is you have your direct contracts, but if you have say Dental Network of America or Dentamax or something like that, and you've done an umbrella under it, you could be dropping more plans than you know. And so when you're analyzing, you're not just running Aetna, you're running Aetna and Guardian and Carrington 300 and whatever, because they're all in your system that way.
Mhm.
So you have to be careful and make sure you know who you're with and what you're doing on those.
Sorry,
Bear
go
with-
ahead, Ed.
Are we good?
Yeah,
I
there's a
can.
question.
Go ahead.
We're a fee-for-service practice getting frustrated with insurance companies not giving enough benefit information. We would like to start collecting 100% from the patients and
Yeah.
have the insurance payment remitted directly to the patient. Any suggestion on how to handle this?
Yes, I would do a 6-month plan. What I mean by that is we live in 6 months because of cleanings in our offices. So I would maybe June 1st, start informing your patients when they come in that at this, starting next January, because of issues and problems we're having with the insurance companies, we are no longer going to be accepting assignment. We will still submit the insurance for you, but the payment will be going to you. So when you come in January, please be prepared to pay X number of dollars. I have an office that I coach the manager that was very successful with this. It's taken them, they didn't do it quite that organized. He did it without me knowing and just started doing it. But it took him about 6 to 8 months and the patients were prepared. You may want to send a letter. You may not. I personally like the personal touch, but the other thing is if you have somebody coming in who isn't used to that, you want to tell them over the phone.
Yeah.
Education ahead of time is going to be your key. Hitting them up when they're standing in front of you and they're not used to paying is not my suggestion.
Yeah. Question somebody has, why can't you see DMO patients if they're out of network? Can't they choose to pay in full?
Oh, they can.
Yeah,
They're
but
just not using their benefit at all.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware. You certainly can see them. They just have to know.
Mhm.
But I realize we're coming up. I don't want to.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing with, if you're canceling, be aware of who you're umbrellaed under or who you leased under. And if you're not sure, double check before you cancel something if they show you leased to anybody. So if you call Aetna, you need to ask, are there any other plans that I've been leased that are leasing this network that I may be losing before you cancel them? Because you might think you're canceling somebody that there's not a lot of patient base and losing others. And I know I don't think I even need to put up questions because we've been doing that.
We do have a couple that are unanswered though.
Go ahead.
So that one question back to the where to find the ERAs for MONY. She thinks it's Mutual New York.
Mutual of
just
Omaha,
doesn't-
New York.
New York.
Well, that would make sense.
Not off the top of my head, but I could probably research. I know that Mutual of Omaha has a website, so most likely it's on the website. Where are you?
That's what
I
she's
would
trying
say
to figure out. I don't
where
know
are
the
you
website.
verifying? Where are you verifying the eligibility? Or you can call back to whoever you set up the EFTs with, and they should be able to direct you to it.
Oh, that's not
It
bad.
might be. Here's another thing that happens. Some of them in the past, if they were set up like 4 or 5 years ago or 6 years ago, they might have been emailing EOBs, and if a person they were emailing to them left, those EOBs are going into no man's land.
Oh, yeah. Another question, Change Healthcare is limited on the claims payer list. Do you have any idea who supports EFTs for Sterling Benefits and Diversified Administration Corp?
No, I'm not familiar with those. You'd have to, I would ask them directly. And I know Change Healthcare is limited. Zealous has some, Avility has some, but a lot of times I go straight to the website. And I will tell you, there's the company called Skygen, who I've worked with too, is trying to develop a hub for us that we just go there and it will bring us to everything. It's in the works.
Perfect. She's going to email you directly too, because she has some other.
Absolutely. I like researching those things. I'm kind of,
Laura always called you the insurance nerd.
Yeah. I'm the insurance Nancy Drew. That's what I like to
There
say.
you go. That's
Love
better.
that.
I like that better.
Yeah.
I wanted to be Nancy Drew when I was a kid. I read, at the time there were 60 books. I read 59 of the 60 in a year. And yes, I will admit that.
Oh
Awesome.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. You're my hero.
Sixth grade, man. It was, there wasn't a whole lot else to do.
Okay, so this was so interactive and so much for all this amazing information. Everybody on here, it says my internet is unstable, so I apologize if you're getting bits and pieces of this. You'll get the recording and the email follow-up along with that letter, the patient letter draft. Whoop,
You're here.
what's that?
Oh.
Do you guys hear that?
No?
Okay, I'm hearing something in my ear. So anyway, thank you guys so much for attending. Email Colleen with any questions or if you need additional information, there's her contact information right there. And thank you again, Colleen. Our other events that are coming up in future months will also be thank you in your follow-up email.
There you go. And
All
feel
right.
free to email. I answer as quickly as I can. Sometimes it takes me longer. Other times I do it right away. It all depends on the day.
Yeah.
I hear you on that. Oh my gosh, now I know what was going on. I was on a live webinar that was like a virtual event all day that didn't have anything going on and it started. So sorry about that.
Multitasking. Unfortunately, Megan is freezing up a little bit, breaking
I
up.
think so, yeah.
But we do appreciate being here, Colleen. It's
Yeah, thank you for having me.
really valuable information.
Thanks everybody for attending.
All right, take care.
Thanks, everybody. Send all your questions to Colleen. She'll be happy to answer them.
Absolutely.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks everybody.